Welcome to the first episode of Debunking Pro-Abortion Arguments. I'm your host, Lydia, spokesperson of Students for Life of America, and today I'll be answering the burning question in the center of the abortion debate. When does human life begin? Having a debate or conversation with pro-choicers will almost always lead them to rebutting your argument with, "It's not a baby, it's just a clump of cells." This is the focal point of the abortion debate. If the preborn baby is not a human person, no justification for abortion is necessary. However, if the preborn baby is a human person, no justification for abortion is adequate. But the fact is, preborn children are human beings from the moment of conception. And that's not me forcing my religious beliefs on you. It's not something you even need a Bible to prove. That's just basic biology. A study from Stephen Andrew Jacobs surveyed 5,502 biologists, including pro-choice biologists, asking them when human life begins from a biological standpoint. The results were that 95% of biologists agreed human life begins at fertilization. And if that hasn't convinced you, a preborn child also meets all 7 characteristics of life that are universally agreed upon in biology. These are as follows. Number 1 is responsiveness to the environment, which a preborn baby has. The next is growth and change, which obviously a baby grows in the womb. Number 3 is ability to reproduce, because yes, the genetic code that creates a human's reproductive system is there at the moment of conception. The next one is having a metabolism. And the next one is maintaining homeostasis. The next one is being made of cells and passing traits on to offspring. And a preborn baby meets all of these characteristics. Biology and embryology textbooks are all in agreement that a human life begins at conception. A quote from the Developing Human textbook says, "Zygote. This cell results from the union of an oocyte and a sperm during fertilization. A zygote is the beginning of a new human being." Another quote from Van Nostrand's Scientific Encyclopedia says, "At the moment the sperm cell of the human male meets the ovum of the female and the union results in a fertilized zygote, a new life has begun." The term embryo covers the several stages of early development from conception to the 9th or 10th week of life. These are just some of many biology textbooks that say over and over that human life begins at conception. On the flip side, there are 0 credible biology textbooks that say anything close to human life begins at birth. Pro-life is pro-science. The science says that preborn children are living human beings. And that leads into our next argument. When pro-choicers say preborn babies are clumps of cells, they aren't technically wrong, because all human beings are clumps of cells. But we aren't just clumps of cells. We are unique, living human beings with individual DNA and purpose. The fact that I'm a larger clump of cells than a preborn baby doesn't make me any more valuable. Another argument abortion supporters love to make is that a preborn baby is equivalent to a parasite, which is, of course, another very unscientific claim. Let's look at the definition of a parasite. A parasite is an organism that lives in or on an organism of another species, toast, and benefits by deriving nutrients at the other's expense. So in order to be a parasite, a preborn baby must fit these qualifications. Number 1, they must be a different species from the host. And number 2, they must be actively harming the host. Now, let's debunk those. Obviously, when 2 humans get together to reproduce, they cannot reproduce any other species than a human. So a preborn baby is of the human species. It's not of a foreign parasite species. It's the same species, and therefore it cannot be a parasite. The second qualification is that it has to be actively harming the host. But the preborn baby cannot just be a parasite, because the preborn baby actually provides mutual benefits to the mother. A woman's body is biologically created to be a home for a preborn baby, and the body reacts to the baby and tries to help it grow. Whereas a parasite, your body wants to expel it. The baby sends cells to areas of the woman's body that needs healing, and therefore there are actually benefits to the mother in being pregnant, as our bodies are wanting to have children and wanting to reproduce. So a preborn baby is absolutely not a parasite, and this is just another sick attempt to dehumanize preborn children. Just because a baby is dependent on their mother's body does not make them a parasite worthy of death. A newborn uses their mother's body for breast milk, and we wouldn't label newborns as parasites just because they're dependent on their mother's body. There is no scientific basis behind the idea that life begins at birth, that preborn children are parasites or clumps of cells, because every major scientific textbook and resource says that human life begins at conception. But even after making all of these points, I still have pro-choicers tell me, you don't actually believe a preborn baby is a human being. And they try to prove it with a ridiculous analogy that's somehow very popular called the burning IVF clinic thought experiment. In this analogy, pro-choicers ask you to consider that you walk into a IVF clinic that is burning down and that you're trying to save as many people as you can. And in one corner, there's a screaming toddler in need of help, but there's also, of course, a ton of baby humans in embryonic form that are also in there. And they ask you to imagine that you only have time to save one or the other, either the embryos or the toddler. And of course, many pro-lifers would say that they would save the screaming toddler. And pro-choicers use this to say, oh, see, you don't care at all about the embryos. And that's, of course, not true at all. Imagine the situation of the Titanic. When the Titanic was sinking, who did they decide to save first? The women and children. Now, does that make the men who were left behind any less valuable? Of course not. Just because we as humans decide to save some people first based on our emotions doesn't mean logically any human is worth more or less than each other. Every single human being deserves equal rights, and just because we decide to save one or the other doesn't mean that we don't care about the embryos that were left behind. If we could, we would save them too, but that's not always possible. It's much easier to want to save a screaming toddler because you can hear them and you can see them screaming for help, which is not possible with a little human embryo. The burning IVF thought experiment is just another ridiculous tactic from the pro-abortion movement to try to dehumanize preborn children, because the reality is all humans, born and preborn, deserve equal rights. Pro-choicers often present arguments that lack scientific basis in an attempt to dehumanize the preborn. In contrast, the pro-life movement is grounded in the principles of basic biology. Human life undeniably begins at conception, and as such, every preborn child is entitled to the right to life. Thanks for watching this episode of Debunking Pro-Abortion Arguments. If this was helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend.